From the studios of KENW on the campus of Eastern New Mexico University, it's You Should Know, featuring the people and events of Eastern New Mexico and West Texas.
Welcome to You Should Know. I'm your host, Evelyn Ledbetter, and today I have a guest who is not only a coworker, but also a good friend, Dr. Jeff Gentry. So, Jeff, thanks for joining me this morning.
It's lovely to be with you, Evelyn.
You have always been such a supporter of KENW TV and FM, and always gracious and helped me out with pledge drives, and so just we've spent some time together, and so finally get to do this.
It's great to be on your public broadcast system.
Well, it's a nice place, isn't it?
That's right.
We're very fortunate to have this, and the same with you. Let's start out. Tell me where you're a professor here at Eastern New Mexico University, but tell me a little of your background of where you actually grew up.
Oh, well, I was born in Denver, and most of my life, though, or childhood was in Montana. So lived in Montana, was educated there, and then as a professional, I spent 26 years in Oklahoma, and then the last 7 years I've been in New Mexico. So, you know, a lot of training and education and good experiences.
Okay, and so your family moved, or your family still lives in Colorado, or moved a little?
I still have some. Yeah, my sister is there, my niece is there, but my sister and I are just about it for our generation.
Okay.
And so, but it's nice to be close enough now to be in the same time zone as my sister.
And you actually served as the dean of the College of Liberal Arts, correct? Or no, I'm sorry.
College of Fine Arts.
College of Fine Arts.
Right, yeah. Here, I did that for 7 years, and now I teach full-time in the Department of Communication.
Very nice, very nice. I know those years as dean, that's a lot of work and effort. So.
Well, I was a full-time administrator for 18 years. So it's very different and really refreshing to get to focus on teaching and learning and research.
Right, right. And then your degree obviously is in communications, and you've went bachelor's, master's, and then
all the way through, right?
A nice little snippet. You did your dissertation in Scotland for your doctorate.
Well,
or you lived there for
yeah,
part
I
of
got
that.
to visit Scotland to do research on my dissertation, which was about debate in the Scottish Parliament. In 1999, Scotland reopened its parliament after almost 200 years. And so it was a really ripe source to learn about opposition rhetoric. You know, there's the government and the opposition, and they debate constantly. So that was the subject of my PhD dissertation.
And New Mexico, Eastern is what brought you to New Mexico when you had a position here?
That's right, yeah. So I've been here for 7 years now.
And after stepping away from being the dean, you've started something pretty fun.
It is fun. It's a radio program on KENW FM called Dumb Ideas That Changed the World.
And so tell me how this kind of came about.
Right, yeah, well, a lot of my ideas for creative projects happen over a number of years. And so probably 25 years ago, I thought, you know, it would be fun to write a coffee table book about dumb ideas that change the world. Things like thalidomide, a drug that was too quickly approved in a lot of countries for morning sickness that happened to destroy the lives of the babies and the families because they had these awful birth defects. That's an example. Another one would be asbestos, right? But then there are some dumb ideas that are rejected initially sometimes from scientific heretics that wind up being brilliant. And so some of the shows are about that. So anyway, I thought of this coffee table book, and I'd done some broadcasting before. You know, I've done 6 public affairs TV specials, and I had done Great Arts at Eastern about the fine arts programs here while I was dean. So it just clicked that, hey, I could take that coffee table book idea and do it in segments for radio.
Right, right. And I mean, you started this back right about a year ago. A year ago. And so there's been a full season of the segments, but the ideas that you come up with, and I know there's a ton of research. The segment is typically about 2.5 minutes on radio, but the research that goes into that is tremendous.
Right, yeah. So it starts with a spark. an idea, a germ of an idea. Oh, wow, this was an idea. The show isn't about dumb people being dumb. It's about smart people being dumb, which is far more dangerous because they have the resources to invest in their dumb ideas.
Uh-oh.
So it starts with a spark like that, then lots of research, because there's that moment of terror when I think, okay, a little information is not going to work. I need to have my facts straight. So I really focus. And so oftentimes it's a 2-week process of intensive hundreds of pages of reading. And so then I'll get a draft. Mm-hmm. But then when you're trying to make it exactly 2 minutes and 20 seconds to go along with the 10-minute disclaimer that Shannon Hearn, my producer, provides, takes massive editing. But I love the process as I get it down. Okay, it's 2:19. We think we're good.
Well, the basics. You're not going to be somebody that can just yabber forever. It's got to get all the details and get the point across of exactly what that is.
Word economy is critical.
Do you have one of the segments that you would do for us?
Absolutely. They're all my babies, right? Mm-hmm. But one of them that I think is really fascinating is about the First Amendment and why the First Amendment has become controversial. But I was able to research why the First Amendment is so strict in this country.
Okay. Well, if you'll actually do that one for us, I think that's pretty entertaining and give our viewers a taste of what they can hear on radio as well. So I'm going to get you to do that right now.
Yes, you can say that and get away with it. Free speech is strenuously protected in this country. The Supreme Court seems obsessed with it, striking down any law that might insult the First Amendment. Some of our listeners are still incensed at the High Court for striking down the Communications Decency Act of 1996, or the McCain-Feingold campaign finance reform of 2002, or both. More than any other country, our courts are touchy when it comes to censorship. Have you ever wondered why? Today's dumb idea comes from the 18th century British Empire, the height of the Enlightenment, when old parochial ideas gave way to human rights, literacy, and the marketplace of ideas. British subjects were now enjoying unprecedented freedoms and prosperity. In America, the 13 colonies just wanted those same freedoms. But when the king and parliament started cracking down with oppressive censorship, Americans cried foul. Why weren't they afforded the same freedoms as their countrymen in England? A catalyst in exposing this injustice was Benjamin Franklin. At age 17, Franklin had to take over the New England Courant when his brother James was jailed on a dubious charge of scandalous libel. Ever more an advocate of a free press, Ben Franklin was a delegate to the Constitutional Convention 65 years later, and he made sure the First Amendment was unmistakable. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press, religion, and assembly. If England's kings hadn't been so dumb about free speech in America, the First Amendment's strict prohibitions on censorship may never have happened. We were the first country to guarantee these freedoms and did so more than 100 years before anyone else. So if you think we take free speech too far in this country, blame King George. If you're glad the government can't tell you what to say, hats off to that kite-flying patriot, Ben Franklin.
That's really interesting. I listened to these, but so this one, you actually, the name of it, you can say that and get away with it. And
yes, you can say that and get away with it. Yeah, it's just all about the origin, because a lot of history is comprised of accidents.
Right.
Right? In this country, they have these laws because some king got really focused on something, and that's just been their tradition. You know, every country in the world has its unique laws and traditions. And, I say let 1,000 flowers bloom. But, some people don't love how free speech is in this country.
I think it depends on if you're the one wanting to speak or if you're wanting the other person to not.
Right.
So,
yeah, and I mean,
control.
It's a subject of great scholarship. The idea is friendly ideas don't need protection, right? Ideas that are innocuous don't need, the ideas that need protection, or the speech that needs protection, is that which offends people, especially powerful people. And powerful people should double down on making sure that their opponents have free speech. Because if the other side loses it, guess what? Things can turn around on us too.
And we're seeing that a lot today, the political environment that we have. But whatever side you're on, there's the other side. And I think news is interesting that even though you can present things that are a true story, if you don't give the flip side, it can skew what you're listening to, because you only hear one side of that version, whereas free speech. And that's a huge thing in our country, to be able to speak out and have that right.
Right.
So,
and I think free speech in our country has been deteriorating somewhat. Respect for free speech has been deteriorating, but I think about now things are starting to go the other way, and people are understanding it is important to allow discourse and not try to cut it off.
And I think the best thing is when I do talk with someone, if I can keep an open mind, even though I'm pretty set in my thoughts, if I can have a discussion with someone, I'll listen to it. And there may be something in there that I'll start floating around in my mind and go, that's a valid point. I need to pay attention to that.
But then you gain from that.
Right.
And so I talk about selfish free speech, right? I want to learn new ideas from other people. So I want to make sure that they are free to speak, and then I can selfishly gain from their knowledge.
And so the work on this segment.
Oh yeah, it does go back to some of my research, that's for sure.
Okay. And just hours and hours of pouring through and what Ben Franklin did on this.
Right. Yeah, I only had learned recently about Ben Franklin having to take over the New England Current because his brother was in jail. So he's a teenager, right? Having to take over a newspaper. So that is going to stay with you. So that many years later, when he had a chance to protect free speech and freedom of the press, he sure did.
Well, and I think, just like on this, Ben Franklin, you think about electricity, but there's so much more to the man than just that. There was a lot of information.
One of the most interesting people in world history.
Would he be one of the people you would have at a dinner party?
I would absolutely love to have dinner with Benjamin Franklin.
That always seems to be the question of, who would be your people at a dinner party if you could select? He's
Right.
a pretty good one.
Absolutely.
But so some of your other segments, was this one of your more favorite ones, or just something that just drew you to it?
It's funny because if it isn't a favorite, I quickly discard it, right? So honestly, I really like all of them. Now, some of them have their different qualities. Some of them are funny. Some of them are tragic. Some of them are inspiring, like Frances Kelsey, who was the woman who stopped thalidomide from being approved in the United States, saving thousands of lives and family heartache over deformities. So they each have their different appeal.
Well, and truly that one was based on the fact that women, if they lose weight during pregnancy, low birth rate of the children, they're less healthy. So this helped with morning sickness, and it kind of came about the FDA, right? It put in more restrictions, and because they wouldn't just sign off on it, women in America didn't take the medication like they did in other countries.
Right. Like a lot of these subjects, a good germ of an idea, right? Let's reduce morning sickness so women don't lose weight, so we don't have low birth weight babies. That's a great idea. But this particular drug was a disaster. So, but that's why I think that we need to pay attention to ideas that are popular. Just because an idea is popular, you don't necessarily know the long-term consequences. So there are some themes in the show. One theme is short-term thinking versus long-term thinking.
Sure.
A lot of our dumb ideas caused havoc because people only thought in the short term.
Right. The long-term effects, just like asbestos. I mean, that was
exactly.
That was
short-term miracle.
that was an amazing product.
Yeah.
And that's one of the segments that you do as well.
Yeah. In fact, I think I call that one short-term miracle, long-term disaster.
And I've traveled somewhat, and you have other countries that have buildings that are hundreds or thousands years old. U.S., we don't. I think a lot of them we see buildings coming around in the U.S., and a lot of it's tied to the asbestos.
Right. It's a huge industry, just asbestos abatement, which of course, over the long run, we would have saved ourselves billions of dollars and hundreds of lives if we had not used asbestos.
Well, you did such a nice job on the first segment. Can I talk you into doing another one?
Absolutely.
So tell me what you want to do on this one.
All right. Well, this one to me is I mean, I don't like to use the word stupid because it's a hard word, you know. It's like the word hate. I don't like the word hate but dueling was an idea filled with stupidity. I mean, there's no other way around it.
That old comic saying, you can't fix stupid, and it took a long time to fix stupid on this.
Right, and that's one of the other themes in my show is that I don't like to use hindsight bias and say, oh, people 400 years ago were just dumb. That hindsight bias, I think, is prejudicial and ignorant. These segments are about dumb ideas that were recognized as dumb at the time.
Well, let's get you to do that one, and we'll come back and talk about it a little bit
on the
afterwards.
Other side.
Yeah.
Very good. The Baron is standing up to be shot down. Austrian Count Bissingen had a quarrel with one of his best friends who challenged him to a duel. After accepting, the two immediately made up, but their seconds insisted they proceed. Both men tried to shoot in the air, but the Count was mortally wounded. He left behind a wife, 2 small children, and another on the way. You're thinking, hey, that's ancient history. But this fight to the death didn't happen in 1600 or even 1800, but in the spring of 1900. How could the right of private war last into modern times? Blame the code of chivalry, death before dishonor. Scholar Raquel Sanchez says the respectable aristocrat had to defend his honor against all aggressions. This semi-legal form of conflict resolution propped up the ruling class. Why didn't good men just say no? It wasn't that simple. Also in 1900, Marquis Antoine de Tocoli refused to take up arms against his antagonist. Not only was he demoted to the rank of private due to cowardice, a fellow officer who simply defended his choice met the same fate. They were now social outcasts. Even poets and philosophers gunned each other down. Today, we don't fathom the death toll because duels were vastly underreported. Noble families were sworn to silence. Sure, it was hard to ignore when Vice President Aaron Burr killed Alexander Hamilton in 1804, but most duels are lost to history. An 1838 pamphlet howled that it kept all Europe in ceaseless bloodshed. Things got so bad that anti-duelist societies sprang up everywhere. In 1908, Prince Alfonso de Bourbon organized an international conference in Budapest, saying he knew of no outrage more idiotic or barbarous. The meeting helped turn the tide against dueling and toward the rule of law. Lucky that none of my ancestors were prestigious enough for this deadly game.
Pretty interesting of how crazy to get a set of guns out just out of, like you said, out of a machismo of, and it was a slight, like they actually were going to stop. And I didn't understand the word the second, I guess.
The second, that's your second, like your ring man, like your person who tries to make sure that the duel is done correctly. So he's your advocate, basically, at the duel. And there's also a doctor there.
So they were, to pronounce them dead.
Well, to try to help, because a lot of times people were wounded, but it was not life-threatening. And
oh my gosh, and they were literally pressured into going ahead, and they tried to shoot in the air, and they still.
Right, well, that's the thing about Count Bissingen, the specific example that we gave was that it was a friend of his, but under that system of chivalry and aristocratic pride, there was an offense and they quickly got into that duel situation, but then like within hours, they had made up, but it was their seconds, right? The men who were supposed to help them made sure that somebody had to die.
Whew. And that was the 1900s, so that really...
Well, Count Bissingen, I think, was earlier, but the
last ones,
major duel, I mean, there were a couple of duels into the 1950s even, but it generally, because there was a whole international conference against dueling, if you can believe that, in the early 1900s, that turned the tide.
I think those would be great in the classroom, like those little segments, and make the kids think about the thoughts and the history on that. Okay, my daughter was a high jumper. So tell me about your high jumper that modernized how this is done now.
Oh my goodness, Dick Fosbury. This is one of our funnier episodes, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. He was a bad high jumper. A kid from Medford, Oregon, who was a teenager. You know, he's 15 years old. He goes out for the track team, tries high jump, doesn't do a good job. You know, he's just gangly, awkward, uncoordinated, a little bit of talent. So he himself, this teenage kid, starts experimenting, which is interesting because he went on to become an engineer, and his first engineering project was himself.
Oh my.
So he tried a new technique for the high jump that had never been tried before. So what he thought he would do is jump straight up, backwards, over the bar, and then land on his neck.
Oh gosh. So prior to that, you said he literally was doing a scissor jump, right?
Well, that was a leading style, was the scissors, where they put one foot up and then the other, kind of jumping sideways. And that was an improvement over what they were doing before, which is basically jumping straight over the bar. But this was completely different. And one writer, nearby sports writer, said it looked like a corpse falling out a window.
And he had compressed vertebrae and all kinds of issues.
He hurt himself. But about that time, high jumpers were starting to get these big mats, cushioned mats that they could land on. So the timing was just right. Anyway, short story, he goes from a bad high jumper to winning the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, 7-something foot.
7'4", he winds up. Later that same year, he wins the Olympic gold in Mexico City.
And my daughter, obviously.
Everybody does the Fosbury flop.
Yeah, so that's the reason this one was pretty interesting. And her state, when she won state, was like 5'2". So that guy was an amazing high jumper along with it.
Well, 5'2" is outstanding. But I would never be able to do that. But yeah, he revolutionized his sport.
So let's get into some of this show airs on our KENW-FM, and it airs Wednesdays at 12:45.
Yeah, just about 12:45.
And you have a 2.5-minute segment, or 2.5-minute segment every week.
Right. And sometimes it airs at a different time too, just to fill in. But yeah, Wednesdays at 12:45 in the afternoon is the best time.
And then we also have it on our website so that people can actually go in and listen to these afterwards. And I think they really would be cool to bring into classrooms and other discussions and things like that as well. I want to give some information. So to be able to go to these, you can go to our KENW website, which is kenw.org. And then it's /show/dumb ideas that change the world. But an easy way is just to go to that website and go to the programs and then go down.
Or just go in the search bar. If you just type dumb ideas in the KENW search bar, it'll take you right to it.
And then you've also got a place you would like to have people's comments.
Right. Yeah.
And
so
feedback.
We have the website. It has all of our archived, all of season 1 is archived there. And then if folks want to provide a show idea or just comment or tell me what I said that was wrong, they can go to our email address.
Okay, and that is POR.
Well, it's right, yeah.
.dumbideas@enmu.edu.explore. And you can go right in there and find that out.
Well, you don't need the .explore, right? It's just por.dumbideas@enmu.edu.
Okay. So, and then again, so that's on KENW-FM Wednesdays at 12:45. Where do you hope this goes? I mean, you started this year, but where would you like to see this go?
Well, I mean, it's always nice when an idea has impact, right? And that's why this show is about ideas that have had impact.
Sure.
And so it would be nice if other public radio stations were interested in it and would like to put it on the air as well.
And syndication's a big deal, and that'd be so cool to have that. And I mean, the amount of research and time you've put into this, how cool would it be to have this out to other people to get to listen to and enjoy.
Well, public radio has a lot of these neat segments. In fact, the whole inspiration for putting this show on the air is one of your staff members told me that A Moment in Time was going to be retiring, the speaker was retiring, and that they were looking for some additional programming. And there are all these short segments on KENW FM that are just fascinating.
They're some of my favorite parts of the radio that we have.
And so there's a lot of production that goes into these, and hopefully some good quality. And if this show winds up being spread a little bit, that would be fun.
And I'll give a shout out to Shannon Hearn. He's our operations director for FM, but he's the one that works with you on recording.
He produces the show and does a fantastic job.
Yeah, so that's great. These are so interesting. I think we could almost have one every week and just have a good thought and go, that does make me think.
Yep, well, we have 26 episodes that are on the website, and so we've been renewed for another season.
Very nice, very nice. Well, Jeff, it's always a pleasure to get to see you and work with you, and I appreciate, again, all your help here at KENW and being a true supporter of us and a good friend.
Well, it's an honor to be on this show, and you do a great job.
Well, thank you for that. Great. And to all of you, thank you for watching. We will see you next time. Cheers.